Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
So let me tell you, I'm really excited about today's show. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest. First of all, I just want to thank her very, very much for getting up extra early for us. Cheralyn Darcey is joining us from Australia, where it's 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. Cheralyn Darcey is actually in Sydney. She is a botanical artist, organic gardener, and author. She has a long association with many environmental organizations, creating eco artworks and educational workshops. Inspired by her pagan family upbringing and her passion for nature and magic, her publications include oracle decks and books which bring the ancient language of flowers through the doctrine of signatures alive in the modern world. She's a popular presenter on ABC Radio, national festivals, libraries, museums, and as a regular guest on television. Cheralyn is an expert on the ancient magic and folklore of our gardens, plants, flowers, and herbs. Her publications include the Australian Wildflower Reading Cards, Flowerpaedia, 1,000 Flowers and Their Meanings, Flower Petals, and the Flowers of the Night Oracle Cards, the Book of Flower Spells, and the Book of Herb Spells. So I'd like to welcome to the show Cheralyn Darcey. Welcome. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on your show. But I get to be a time traveler as well, obviously, when I do shows in the United States and England too.
Okay.
It is tomorrow.
So hopefully this isn't your first rodeo getting up so early for Americans.
No, it's not. Not at all. I love it. It's not my first one. Thank you for having me.
Very, very good. Well, for those of you that are watching live, let me just show you real quick the book cover, because I love the book cover. Actually, I do have a photo of it somewhere in there. It's a beautiful cover. I love the beautiful colors of the flowers behind the pentacle that you have there. And I've been of course paging through and thinking about actually trying to find what I'm going to use for our Samhain festival coming up.
Oh, okay.
But let's see, I might be able to throw something together for our ritual in the next couple of weeks. But Cheralyn, as usual, you know, this is your first time on the show, and I'd like to welcome you and to get you a little more, or get our audience a little more familiar with your work. Could you share with us a little bit about your story, what brought you into this particular path? I see that you had pagan upbringing, lucky you. And what kind of brought you to where you are now, especially with your love of plants and creating this beautiful book on flower spells?
Okay, well, I did have a pagan upbringing, and I always find it quite interesting when people sort of notice that in my notes. And in Australia, my mum still is a tarot reader. She lives, my mum and dad and one of my brothers live in far north Queensland in beautiful Cairns, and mum still reads tarot and oracle at a spiritual festivals and also in a spiritual centre up there. But I was just one of those people, you know, when you hear about families that, you know, someone says, oh, I was brought up in a very strictly religious family and I couldn't wait to get out the door and become a pagan or a witch. Well, I was kind of the opposite in the 1980s. I had this wonderful pagan upbringing, and when I was about 17, I was like, get me out of here. I'd like to go and earn heaps of money and be all materialistic. So I was kind of the opposite for a while there. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but I eventually sort of came background. My parents, look, they sea changed. We lived in the city. I had a stepfather. We were a real Brady Bunch kind of family. And I think in order for my parents to cope, because they're both pagan, have pagan beliefs, that they decided to uproot us and take us to the Australian bush. And we had a small farm, and they were those real grassroots types of people. Dad kind of semi-invented solar power, flushing toilets. I mean, they were around, but he found ways to make these happen. And we grew all our own vegetables and plants. And my mum is a wonderful, wonderful artist as well. And I was very inspired by her when I was young. And also just growing our own things. It was just a natural thing that we did. And that just stayed with me. And, of course, I was a rebellious teen, left home early, did all my own things, lived the 1980s, materialistic lifestyle for a while. But, of course, came around because when things didn't work in life, luckily I did have that grounding in sort of a more natural and nature-based sort of belief system, I guess. Mum would be called what you'd say now as a kitchen witch, a solitary witch. She never said that she was a witch when she was younger. Sometimes she does now. But it was just she created ritual and spells and things, much the way you sort of you made traditional recipes and foods and things like that. So we just did things, and those things stayed with me. When I left, when I was in my early 20s, I was an artist. I used to make beautiful paintings and objects and sell them at markets and things, but everything was always flower-based and plant-based, and I became fascinated with botanical history, with gardening myself, and also I started studying things like flower essences, aromatherapy. It was always pulling me back to flowers and the meanings of flowers and the relationship of not just flowers, they're my passion, but all plants and people, whether it's culturally, religiously, therapeutically. I just find that particularly now, we just either take it for granted, our plants and our flowers, or we overuse. So we take it for granted, we overuse, or we just don't look at where these things come from and what their potentials can be, because we're nowhere near understanding spiritually, therapeutically, physically the potential of actually understanding and using these things properly and looking after them as well. So my work is, I guess, it's ethnobotany. In a way, it's a relationship between plants and people. And I just love collecting the information, researching, working out things and creating these things and trying to make the language of flowers and the doctrine of signatures and the way that you can connect with plants and flowers available to everybody, no matter what path you're on. So that's what I try to do with my work. And Flower Spells is no different. It's a book that I hope lights the path a little bit for people who'd like to know more, but also those who are more experienced. It's a book that they can use in their path as well, because it's more focused on the actual flowers and plants.
And that's what I actually love about it. It's very interesting. And I love to have someone who is very knowledgeable about these particular aspects, especially when it comes to like flowers and herbs and whatnot. For me, my spell work has always been about focus, intention, consciousness. Maybe I'll light a specific incense. Maybe I'll do it at a particular day on a particular astrological, energetic aspect. But as far as like crystals and flowers and things like that, I've just never, I don't want to say never focused on them, but it hasn't been my main focus, which I feel the way that I look at magic is that all of these, how shall we say, all these elements, I don't want to be cliche but say elements, but all of these particular aspects or tools like crystals and flowers and the dates and whatnot. For me, magic starts off with an intention, and to get that ball rolling, yes, we're going to use consciousness, but all of these other things to me are like enhancers, or can actually do the work for you instead of you having to use all your energy. So I really appreciate this book for that reason. It's like, wow, now I'm really being able to grasp the energy of the flower. So perhaps, Cheralyn, could you tell us a little bit, maybe follow up a little bit more on what I'm saying here? Why flowers, and what can flowers do for us, whether it be energetically, and what makes them so special when it comes to spell work?
Well, I hear exactly what you're saying there with your work, and I often say to people, you know, they look at these two books since they've come out, and they might be very experienced, like you obviously you are with spell work and magic, and these books are to you, they would be like imagine you're a master chef, or you're a really good cook, you know, and you're used to just grabbing all your ingredients and going, I'm going to go cook something great. But imagine if you sort of said one day, well, I really want to make sweets and things. This is a specialized cookbook that's just on chocolate, you know, and it just tells you everything about chocolate. You might know a bit about chocolate, but here it all is in this book. So I look at it like that. It's a real focus on things. That's a very simplistic way of looking at it. But I also say I'm not preaching to the choir here. You know, I'm providing information for everybody, and I really think it's important. I meet so many people all the time that love the magical aspects of everything. They'd like to try things. So these books introduce those people as well to magic that they already feel. You know, if I speak to someone who loves flowers, I can see the magic in their eyes, in their hearts when they're speaking. Oh, I love flowers. They make me feel like this and that. These people are very in tune with that side of it. And this introduces them to, well, this is why you feel that way, and these are the reasons why. And you can use the book that way. Why flowers are so, and why I get so jazzed out about flowers as well. Let's look at what they are. They are the sexual parts of a plant, or of angiosperms, of flowering plants, of which that's what most plants are, flowering. And their whole job is to help the plant reproduce. So the flowers are bright. Usually they're trying to attract pollinators. And there's a lot of hard science that also will tell us that they're trying to attract us as well, because we become attracted to plants when we plant them. And we help them with their legacy. We help them keep growing as well. The flowers provide usually most of the perfume. It's the same thing. It's all about attraction, reproduction, and it's the part of the plant, as I said, the pollinators get attracted to, and so do we. The energy of flowers, and I think this is a big mistake some people, sometimes a lot of people make, the energy of the flowers is actually through the whole plant. So a lot of people think, oh, it's just in the flower, that's it. If the flower's not there, well, forget about it. The plant has a different energy. Not so. The energy that you're feeling from a flower, or that I've described in this book, or other people will share with you through aromatherapy and flower essences and so on, is still there in the plant. It is stronger and more focused when the plant is flowering. There's no doubt about that, but it's still there. And I think when we're discovering plants, and whether it's for therapeutic, magical, spiritual work, I think flowers are a fantastic introduction, because it is the easiest thing to understand. Obviously, the plants created flowers for that reason, for themselves, but also it's easy for us to decipher the meanings when we look at something like a sunflower. I think there's no doubt about the fact that we can look at the flower and see this great big yellow sun disc and understand that a sunflower means strength and energy, male energy particularly. Look at all the seeds, the fertility that it indicates as well, that great big long, strong stem that it has, growth, strength, power, courage. It means these things. So we can understand the plant very, very easily. And when it comes to magic work, of course, things that we would like to happen in our life, if we'd like growth to happen, they grow very quickly, the flower. So the indication that it's giving us, it grows very quickly. It's, I don't know how many times I've been to visit people in hospital, and there's sunflower pitchers or there's sunflower bouquets in the lobby for us to give to people as well. So it's all about getting well, feeling stronger. So these are the things to look at when you're looking at flowers, much like crystals. I think a lot of people realise the pink crystals, things like rose quartz, means love. If we look at a pink rose, we're looking at that sort of softer, romantic sort of indications as well. But in my book, I also sprinkle it through with little things about historical notes about people and places and things like that that have to do with flowers. And I think it's important to share the botanical history because it fleshes out the character of flowers and how they have inspired people and supported people and different things throughout history, because you get to understand them a little bit better as well. But yeah, we're focusing on flowers today, but it's the same as plants as well. As I said, it's quite funny, people sort of hone in on that flowers, but flowers are part of the plant. So I just really like to emphasize that there.
Well, I appreciate it. And actually you're bringing me to my next point is for those of us on the magical path, whether it be pagan or shamanic or whatnot, getting to know and understanding the frequencies, the characteristics of life, of nature, is an important aspect of our work. So you were bringing up a little bit of understanding the characteristics of say, the sunflower. What are some suggestions you would give to somebody who's starting off on this path, and especially within the realm of the flower kingdom, for lack of a better term? What can people look for? What is a great way to attune with specific flower energies, or basically, how do you connect with the flower energy?
Well, I'd say you start local. That's as simple as that. As you've already shared with people, I live in Australia, and I am Australian, and our flowers here are very different to the rest of the world. They're very, my gosh, they're very strong. They're very exotic looking. They're very different looking. But I've travelled, and I've actually lived in the United States. I've lived overseas and travelled a lot. But I feel the frequencies and I feel the energy of Australian flowers so easily. You know, I understand them. And it's funny looking at people. I just did a festival, the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival in Sydney last week, and there was a lovely couple from the UK visiting, and they were in the audience, and they'd only just been here, and they'd gone for a walk in our botanical gardens, and they were saying to me, oh, it's like being somewhere from outer space, seeing your flowers in real life. We experienced some, and I said that's funny sometimes to me, because they just feel like home. They feel like me to me, those flowers, because this is where I was born. So I would say start with local flowers, because you will find the flowers of the place of your birth. You just seem to understand quicker, more easily. When you read about them, it sort of just makes sense to you, and then you can branch out from there. I found it, because I've done this work since my early 20s, so over 30 years now. I've studied botanical history, I've gardened, and I've travelled, and I've looked at plants, and I've drawn them and painted them and written about them for that long. But I found that understanding the flowers that I grew up with really well and going back to that source, and I find getting people to do that for themselves, they get this appreciation, and they sort of tune in quicker, and then they can branch out from then, so they can see the similarities. They can understand a different, I'm just thinking of different flowers, because I just spoke about the sunflower, and we have a flower here in Australia called a waratah. It's actually a red flower, and it has very similar properties to a sunflower. It doesn't look like a sunflower whatsoever. You don't have anything that really looks like it. It's like a great big sort of ball of shiny red fingers that all clasp together. But it has similar energies, and I'm sure a lot of Australians, if they were listening at the moment, would go, oh, yeah, I get it, because it's this strong flower, because you understand the frequency of it. You understand that the energy of it a little bit better. But starting out, a lot of people ask me as well, where do you find all the information? What one book, one source? And there isn't one. It is actually gardening, going to gardens, going out into nature and looking at flowers, not going and looking at service station, and flowers and wrapped in plastic. Please don't do that. That's not going to teach you anything over hybridized flowers.
But so let me go back and share with you the book cover for those of you that are watching live. It is the Book of Flower Spells with Cheralyn Darcey. And we have so much to cover, but I would love to pick back up where we were as far as connecting with flowers and their energies. Can you, I guess, to get us started on the spells aspect, in what way do you use flowers in your spells? Do we need to boil them? Do we need to burn them? What are some of the ways that you utilize flowers in your spells?
Okay, but all of the above, actually.
All right.
So you can use them in all those sorts of ways. So personally, I grow them and I use them fresh, distill them as people make flower essences. So I soak them in water and make floral essences that way. I also make a lot of botanical things like bath bombs even, and beautiful oils as well, just by soaking flowers in oils. You have to be careful. You have to be able to, you must check to make sure that you can use the same as any plant matter as well, that you can use it topically on your skin, that you can burn it, because of course some plants and some flowers, burning them, can release things that you shouldn't be breathing in that are toxic. So you need to check all these things out. But yes, you can make incenses out of them, and you can make all sorts of things out of them, and even foods to eat. There's a lot of edible flowers, and I mention those in my book as well. And you've just reminded me, because I have a really good resource, an old resource on my blog that I'll put on my Facebook page today, that has a whole list of edible flowers, so you can easily obtain organic flowers or grow them yourself and put them into things, and that way you can assimilate the different energies as well. But let's go back to, and this is how ancient people used flowers as well, and assimilated these energies. But also, even say in Australia, there's a lot of instances with a lot of people's, Indigenous people across Australia, where they would simply sit with a flower. And I mentioned the waratah, which is like your sunflower. They would, if they needed extra courage and strength, they'd simply sit by it, and a form of meditation, close their eyes, sit by the flower, and really be at one. It sounds like a cliche, but that's what they would do. And they would absorb the energy that way as well. And I think we need to understand to be respectful. We're not taking. Don't over-harvest flowers and plants, and be respectful and understand your own feelings as well. If it doesn't feel right to pick a flower or to use that flower, don't do it. Like, it's obviously the plant can't give up that flower at the moment. So it's just about quietening down a little bit and being more observant of the natural world and understanding and reading. I think, people who've gone before us, who've done a lot of work with flower essences, Dr. Bach, Ian White, those people really understood, and these are modern people, really understood flower energies. And those correspondences that they used, that's the same across the board. That's can be used in magical work as well. It doesn't change, that's what it is. I think a lot of people rely too much with plants on the intuition. There's nothing wrong with that. I see it as a layer to it as well, because, of course, individual plants, the same as individual people and individual animals, will have their own aspects, but it shouldn't replace cold hard facts, research and history as well of a plant. Just because you may feel a rose means, I don't know, success in career or whatever you might think it means, maybe that's what that particular plant is saying to you. You can't replace that for the fact of what a rose actually means energetically, its history. You can't replace that. So there's a lot to be said for research. And when people ask me, where do you get the information from? My gosh, I read so many gardening books and garden journals, like old garden journals from people and they mightn't even consider themselves spiritual, but they are to me, because they have immersed themselves in the plant kingdom, and they have described plants and their aspects and their environments and their lives as well. So those are the sorts of things. But just easily, that introduction, as you said, is start with your aromatherapy flower essences, read about those things, and just grow a plant and watch it and understand it a bit more. That's how I'd say. And look at those plants that are around you. And also plants that you are attracted to. Like, what flower do you really love? What one makes a difference to you? You know, like, does it has a feeling? Peonies, peonies, some people call them.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a real change in me when they're around, a real change. And I know they're about healing support, and because I know that, but you can go and look it up in the language of flowers and in the Doctrine of Signatures, flower essences and so on. You can look at those meanings. And that gets you to start understanding the way they make you feel. Daisies, to me, are a universal happiness flower. They mean protection, happiness, playfulness, our childhood. You know, there's not many people that wouldn't smile if you gave them a bunch of daisies. You know, these are the things to look at to start with, and just get a bunch of flowers and stick it in your home. You know, watch what happens and observe what happens, not just with you but people around you as well. These are just really simple things that you might already be doing, but just watch a little more closely at what happens. That's what I'd say.
I love it. And gosh, well, that opens about 3 more questions, but I'll start with the first one is, okay, expanding into the realm of the elements and the elementals. You talk about sensing the flowers and you know, knowing to pick it, when not to pick it. One of the warnings, for lack of a better term, I was given by one of my pagan teachers was to never let the flowers sit in your home dead, that the fairies get offended, and you don't like that as well. You should sense the elemental kingdom when you're about to cut or pick a flower, to make sure you don't piss off the fairies, and maybe you want to give them something back. So where does the elemental kingdom fall into it for you?
Oh, exactly what you've said. Exactly what you said. Well, it's not. I don't care what your belief is. It just goes across the board, you know. And we've already seen this with, now what am I thinking about at the moment? Turmeric. I don't know if you've had the great sort of wave of everybody having turmeric lattes and this herbs in everything at the moment. And we have over harvested it, and there's all this, oh no, there's not enough in the world, and because nobody's stopped to listen to what's going on and planted it themselves, or, you know, looked after that great sort of you know, the plants. They haven't done it at all, and it's just, whether you call it elementals, whether you call it the plant kingdom, whether you call it the earth, you know, you've pissed the earth off because you have over harvested. You haven't stopped and taken consideration. So it's absolutely what you've said is true, and that's exactly how I observed it. I smiled when you said that about being mindful, and even when you said about leaving dead flowers. Now I'm sitting here in my little studio, my little office, for whatever you'd like to call it, and I have bunches of dried roses like hanging around the places. And, you know, I suppose people would walk in and think, well, they're dead flowers, you know. They're not sitting rotting in water. Right. There's a big difference between, and I've dried these roses because I'm going to use them in spell work and in different things that I'm going to make. And but dead and dying, the elementals don't like something sitting in, you know, going mouldy and going rotten. Yeah. So it's, of course, take them out and return them to the earth. If you're not going to dry them and have a use for them, I find that that's what it's all about. Picking flowers to put in a vase, for you to appreciate and to change the energy, because that's what giving flowers and putting them in a vase in your home is doing. That is a use, not just to looking beautiful is a use, but it is to change the energy. That's why we give flowers. If you go to hospital and someone's sick, you know, the first thing you think of is giving them flowers, because you're hoping it's going to make them feel better and smile and feel a bit better. So you're having a use for it. When you no longer have a use for that, return it to the earth. You know, go and bury them outside somewhere in the garden, or compost them, or keep them going. Don't just toss them in the bin. What your friend was saying is absolutely true. I say it's pissing off annoying the elementals, annoying the earth, you know, like, don't be wasteful. That's the lesson to be said there. And again, I think it helps you be part of that circle of life. Like you're composting, you're having a use for it. My flowers that people have given me, or I've picked up, you know, they're sitting. I'm looking at some now. I'm pointing at them. You can't see me doing that. they're ready for their next use. That's the thing. So it you know, I haven't overused them. I don't pick everything that I see, and I certainly don't pick, you know, protected wildflowers. And I grow some myself. You know, because I want to use them, and this is the sort of thing that you should do. It's being mindful, careful, and not being arrogant to the point of thinking, you know, I'm queen of the flowers, king of the flowers. I'm just going to have all these things. It's sharing what you create as well. I think it's really, really important as well. That's why I write what I do and what I share what I do, and I share. I have quite a large garden where I live, and I share what I grow as well, not just the flowers, the vegetables and things as well, because it's I don't like waste at all because of that, because I feel energetically it's wrong. I know it is. Yeah.
Well, it's respecting the life force by all means. Definitely.
Absolutely.
And that's what they are.
Absolutely.
They have life force in them. And, you know, you brought up something at the very beginning of the show, which actually changed everything for me. The idea that they are the reproductive organs of the plant. I never looked at it like that. So thank you for that. I was like, wow, that's the giver of life of that particular plant.
Yes.
So that's a wonderful way to look at that. Another question that we have, and actually this is my question, and I have another one from Treva. As I started on this particular path, and I read all the grimoires and the books and the occult writings and whatnot, there was always one plant I couldn't find, namely Mandrake. So it's like, you know, what would you tell an aspiring young kitchen garden witch if you can't find this very odd, rare plant, flower, or whatnot? Is it okay to substitute it? Is it okay to use your intuition to find another plant? And why do we have to have Mandrake?
Why do you have to have Mandrake? Okay. Well, way back when people wrote all these things that you've read and heard about, you know, people, we have this sort of you know, vocal sharing of things as well. This is what grew around the person who probably first, you know, wrote about those things. And if we have a look at Mandrake, it's, I mean, gosh, oh God, I think it's over romanticized, I think, in modern magic a little bit, but of course you can substitute. And I know you've got my book there, and you can see that I have substitutions throughout, because I know that you haven't got every plant around you. So much like different things in cooking, sort of, you know, you can find substitutions because they're similar. Now, it's not going to be exactly the same, but it's going to be very, very similar. So, of course, you can substitute with something else. Look, I just think it's an over. Look, I have to say, Mandrake is a fascinating plant, because look at it. It looks like a little person. You pull, and this is what it's all about, you know, pulling it out of the ground, and, you know, supposedly it screams when you pull it out. And there's all these different things about it. I'm sort of smiling because I kind of think you can substitute a little bit with parsley, because it has a lot of the same sort of energies as well, and a little bit on the shadow side there. But yeah, just have a look at the meanings and the uses, and go and have a look at a correspondence that's similar. The same as we look at colour correspondences, and we look at what all the different energies are. Exactly the same sort of things for plants. So a young aspiring person, I'd say start studying the language of flowers, the doctrines of signatures, and have a look at other plants. Have a look at what grows around you, and even things that you can get down at your farmer's market that's similar. What are you trying to do with the Mandrake? Are you just wanting to use it just because it's Mandrake, or have you actually got a specific spell or something or ritual that you would like to do? Yeah. I say you're putting the horse before the cart just by going, I want to do something with Mandrake.
Right, exactly.
Like, what do you want to do? You know? Like,
I think I would probably say as a teenager, I just wanted it in my collection.
Well, that's true. And look, there's nothing wrong with it. That's funny you should say. I just turned around and looked at my I've got a cabinet of dried, what you call them, herbs, and they, I've got a few things in there that I've collected and grown myself that I absolutely love up there, and you can use it. It's lovely to have like that, and that's true. But have a look at what you're trying to do. You know, Mandrake's there's probably a better thing that you can find.
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
And if there's a spell with Mandrake, do you really want to do that spell?
Yeah, do you?
A lot
really
of them were very like freaky
energies...
spells back then.
Oh, exactly, they were. And I was just thinking, a friend of mine, she really loves crystals and is actually very knowledgeable with crystals, fantastic crystal worker. And she has this tiny piece of, what do you call it, moldavite, the little asteroid thing. And she said, you know, like some people, you know, they can't wear it. It burns them. It does all this. But she's worked with crystals for so long, she feels okay with it. But she said it's amazing how all these people want it. The first thing they want is a piece of moldavite because it's a piece of asteroid. But they don't understand all the aspects about it, and I'm the same. Look, it's exciting, these plants, and I actually love the passion when people look. It's like anything. It's like, I'm glad you are really jazzing out on this plant. Find out everything about it, and but it's like, my gosh, I think it's like the first people who saw, you know, Venus flytraps, you know, oh my gosh,
right.
a plant that can actually, you had to have it. It can eat flies, you know. Has similar energies. There you go. But look, you know, it's like anything, and I love the initial passion, and I certainly don't want to dampen people down on those things. I'm like, yeah, that's exciting. Go and find out everything else about it, and let's have a look at other things that you know, may seem really mundane, but have similar energies as well. And it introduces people. There's nothing wrong with being super excited about the exotic and the mysterious. But you've also got to look at the fact it's back in these times when people were keeping beautiful journals and sharing spells and information about plants, and our early botanists, this is the only way people would ever find out about this. So imagine if you're in another country and someone's like written about Mandrake somewhere. Look at this plant. It looks like a man underneath it. It probably is a man underneath.
Right.
And then it's like Chinese whispers, you know, it just gets, you know, you end up with this like, yeah, this is what it is, a goblin under the thing with roots hanging off it. All these different stories sort of start to evolve. It's not like we can fact check it across the internet back then.
That's very true, isn't it?
Yeah, and I smile because I come back to being, you know, we have kangaroos in Australia, and when you look at the early explorers of this country and you have a look at their drawings of kangaroos, oh my gosh, they look like some sort of like they haven't changed. It's just that obviously not everyone's the greatest drawer, or their interpretation of what they've seen in front of them can look a little different. And I mean, gosh, a lot of drawings of kangaroos look like these great big, they've got these big heads, and they don't look like a kangaroo really at all. They look like some sort of monster. And so exactly. So you've got to look at that as well. But still, it does describe aspects, you know. I do a lot of my own drawings, and I'd suggest that to people as well. No matter what skill level you think you've got with art, go and sketch flowers and plants as well, because you really get to understand the doctrine of signatures, which is the way a plant looks, its characters, its characteristic, its colour, its line, its form, and that will start to describe the energy as well. So having a sketchbook, I absolutely say get into that. Idea. Oh, yeah, and don't worry about your skill level at all. Like, honestly, it's not, you don't have to ever show your sketches to anyone, but it does, again, Bernard, make you stop and focus in on that plant and makes you think about it, and to me, it's sort of like this true intuition. You know, you really are. Yeah, you're looking at something, you're connecting. Yeah,
absolutely.
and yeah, like what's a beautiful plant that you have? Oh my gosh, I loved it when I was in California. The paintbrush, that paintbrush plant, it's beautiful. It looks kind of like a paintbrush, and it's you know, and I love all the line and form to it, and your little prairie flowers and that, and it really makes you sort of slow down and appreciate it and colour them in. And yeah, you never have to show anybody, but just understand those aspects of a flower a little better.
Absolutely. Cheralyn, one of the things I love about the book and actually your work that you're doing and this discussion is it excites me in the sense that it makes me realize there are other ways of utilizing flowers. It doesn't have to be, I mean, realistically, I'll be honest, the only time I've ever really used flowers is like as a decoration on the altar for a particular spell, and hopefully that energy will help and enhance my spell. But I'm looking at it, and you're giving these wonderful like recipes. For example, I'm looking at the Hibiscus stress release spell, and it's creating a magical lip balm. You know, I never think of it like that. I always think of like, you know, the energy, the essence and whatnot, and utilizing recipes, making magical lip balm, making magical lotions and creams and hell, shampoo, whatever it is. We can incorporate magic and flower magic into all of these things. So I think it's fantastic. What would be an easy one for someone to start with?
Well, I'm going to go back to, I don't know why. It must be people who are listening. I don't know. It just keeps flashing in my head, the sunflower spell. And because they're easy to grow, you can grow them in a pot plant as well. So a very easy one to do. And because in this book you can see that I think they're pretty easy, but they do have different steps to them. I have timings in there. I look at timings as being little supercharges. If you can observe them, do so. And you can see this quite simplistic. I've got very simple phases of the moon and times of the day and days of the week as well. But I've encouraged you in my introduction to go and explore these further as well. But you can do them at any time. A really simple one that I'll give for your listeners is a sunflower or a daisy-like flower. But I say sunflower because they are pretty easy to grow in most places, and you can grow them in colder areas in a pot plant, the smaller dwarf ones as well. So go get yourself a sunflower seed, plant 2 of them because usually sometimes one won't germinate. So do that. Get a little piece of paper with an intention. So this is to grow something in your life that you want to grow quickly and you want to be strong and to happen. So it could be a career change, it could be love, it could be, you know, your artistic inspirations, anything at all. Write that down on a piece of paper. In the earth, plant that. You can get a crystal if you like, a sort of a crystal that you might correspond with that. So say if you want to grow more love, you might want to get a little piece of rose quartz. If you want to grow more protection in your life, you feel like you'd like more of that, a little bit of smoky quartz, something like that. So have a look at your correspondences, or it could just be the piece of paper with that in there. Plant that into the earth, probably about 10 inches down, and make sure you say out loud, I want to grow love in my life, and plant it into the ground. Fill that hole up with dirt, or fill your pot plant up, and then just poke sunflower seeds. You just need to poke them down a little bit into the soil, not very far, probably, you know, like one joint of your finger. That's about it. And water it and grow it, and look after that plant. If 2 come up, well done. You can probably transplant one of them and leave the other one growing in your pot plant or in the earth, and look after that plant. And with it, every day, just go look after the flower and say, I'm growing love every day. This is how I'm doing it. Just write down however it is. And that way you're growing with this fast-growing, strong flower, happy, uplifting, healing flower. You're growing your intention. There's a real simple spell to do. Oh,
I love it. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And you're combining with that energy. That's what you're doing. Now, if the plant, this is an annual, this plant's supposed to die, don't worry about it. That's right. What's supposed to happen. You know, take all the parts of the flower. You can eat sunflower seeds.
Yes, absolutely. You
can eat the petals. You can put the petals in a tortilla or a salad. You can do all sorts of things, but all with those bits of that. Make sure that you compost it, return it to the earth honorably. You know, don't just chuck it in the garbage bin, you know.
My goodness. Well, Cheralyn, we are out of time. I can't believe how quickly this hour's gone by. Boy, I could pick your brain for another 3 hours.
Yeah, love it.
I'm loving it. I love it. I thank you so much. I want everyone to be able to see the book. Again, this is the Book of Flower Spells with Cheralyn Darcey. And Cheralyn, where can people find the book and find more about you?
Okay, the book is available at all Barnes & Noble stores, I believe, across the United States. It's also available on Amazon as well, through Simon & Schuster, through Red Wheel Publishing and Rockpool Publishing. Everyone can find me at CheralynDarcey.com. That's CheralynDarcey. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well. And I'll put that Sunflower Spell up on my Facebook page.
Oh, that's
today
great. I'm going
too.
to have to look for you on Facebook now.
Okay.
Well, I thank you so much, Cheralyn. It has been such a wonderful hour. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll have to have you back when you put another book out. Or, hell,
Absolutely.
just for a talk. Next week, everyone, we will be doing our Goddess Talk. We're going to be speaking about the sacred feminine with author Hallie Austin. Will be joining me live here on the Just Bernard Show. Have a wonderful week, everyone. I love you. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.